if they've clicked on this podcast knowing that I'm talking to Sam Portland, so why do I need to then spend 5 minutes of my time introducing you to Sam Portland? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So now we are recording, and actually, I'm going to ask you: don't spend 5 minutes, but take one sentence. You met someone in an elevator who's a friend of a friend. They've heard about you, but they don't really know what you do. What would you tell them that you do?
I debunk myths of strength and conditioning for team sports and actually make team sport athletes better.
I love that, because I always ask this question for everyone, like, just a quick intro. What would you say you do? And people always give different. I knew you would give something like quite specific, because I know you've spent like years thinking about this, and we'll get into your journey as this podcast goes on, that has sort of culminated at this current time in that stack of books that you see behind you.
Yeah.
Awesome, bro. Great product, great product placement. Like, subtle until the fact that I've just pointed it out. Yeah, there you go. The sports system. So what made you decide that, like, you wanted to, I guess, get into, like, trying to further the industry rather than just being part of it? What situation did you find yourself in? And we can go through your story and to get to this, but what situations did you find yourself in where you thought, okay, I'm part of a system that is potentially broken?
Yeah, great question. I think so. I mean, a big part for me, and I think it comes a lot, like we both came onto the internet probably around the same time, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Pre-2010,
Yeah, I was gonna say just before
2011.
2010 sort of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a whole different conversation in itself. Because we've gone fucking backwards. Um, but the
Facts.
so but for me, like growing up, my first memory at school was being put in special needs. Like I'm dyslexic, and so ultimately that made me quite non-conformist in nature. Because I was sat like they're like, "You're a naughty boy." I was like, "Well, I'm not. I'm just fucking bored because you can't teach me. Like you don't know how my
Yeah.
brain works because you're
Yeah.
limited in your own design." I have 43 people in my class, like with one person. A, B, shut the fuck up, Sam. You're annoying us again, sort of thing, you know? Um, so with that kind of took me all the way through. And the other side of it, like one of my biggest hobbies is like woodwork and carpentry. And if I didn't love sport, I'd probably be building tree houses or something somewhere.
Mm.
So that's that creative side of my brain. And so if you combine all those two, and fast forward like lots of learning support and proofreading and all those bits and bobs, I graduated university at Brunel with a 2-1 by the skin of my teeth, and then I got to get on a master's. And because I was like, oh, I'm going to do this strength and conditioning thing because I just loved Zach Evernish, basically. And I was like, I want to do what he does.
I've been trying to
And
get him
I've
on the
become,
podcast for years, man, and
yeah,
we've chatted a lot, and he's just the
yeah,
busiest man ever. But he old school, man. I love Zach Evernish.
yeah, he's amazing. And that ethos around strength and like DeFranco's back in the day and what it
Mm-hmm.
teaches you, Louis, Westside, all these guys. And I was like, I just want to do that. I love training. And and there was a spell where I broke my leg in 2007 and I lost all my natural speed. I had to teach myself how to walk again. And they put a metal rod inside my leg and they fucked the operation up. So they glued my break open. So it's a year
Oh,
and a half, a year and a half for a tibial fracture. Like it was a mess. And so I lost my natural skill, which got me on the field, as a try scorer. And that ruined dreams of professional rugby. Big sliding doors moment there, which actually brought me back to Wasps. And in the same time, been told that I can't get on a master's course unless I'm working in professional sport or have an internship in professional sport. But the master's was designed to get me a job in professional sport. And then I turned up to my first on site and I was the only one working in professional sport. And I was like, well, what the fuck am I doing here? And so there in itself, I was like, this is broken. This is absolutely broken, because it was funny. The guy that came to watch me play, because this was back in the day, I was in the Rugby World magazine. So I was playing Saturday and Sunday, and I'd scored like 400 points in the season. It was silly stuff.
Jesus.
And then I broke my leg, and he turned up to the wrong club. But I broke my leg somewhere else, and because I changed teams and
Uh-huh.
trying to get to a higher level, and I broke my leg. And then a few years later, he ended up hiring me to work at Wasps, rather than going into what would have been the senior academy. And so it's all funny how these things work. And so, like with the speed stuff and actually developing athletes that are really good at their sport, you have to, everything that I was being taught was just completely wrong,
Mm.
because it's and like my mother, she works in education, and I talked to her about this. She like builds courses and college programs and stuff, and it's just a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating that they have to teach a certain amount of things to be granted status. And obviously, university is a really big, profitable business. And so that's what they have to do, not teaching people how to think independently, and be and bend the information that they're getting. It's one box, one tick, you know. And I've got loads of different stories around that sort of stuff, but that's how I felt it was broken, because they're telling me that I've got to, develop maximal strength. And I was like, well, no, I just fucking run around people. You know,
Hmm.
I run through people. I don't need to be strong to do that, because I
Yeah.
wasn't strong in the gym, but I don't need that. And it was there was so many conflicting issues. And then I'm working with athletes on the field at Watts Academy. And previously, or before that, I was training mates in the park, and I started the Brunel Rugby S&C program when I was there, and a few bits and bobs. And like, I was reading West Side, when I was 17,
Mm.
conjugate periodization, bootlegging off Napster and stuff like that, reading all this stuff. And then they're like, you need to learn this. I was like, no, we've unlearned
Did
this
you manage to
already.
get it? Did you manage to get through super training?
Yes,
Man,
yes,
what a slog. It's like
yes.
that was harder than any part of like any university
Mm.
studying I did. Is it there?
Yeah, I've got it here. Where is it? Where is it? It is there. Oh, it's up here. It's next to motor control and learning, super training, West Side bench manual.
Yep. But what's
So,
interesting is like all that stuff is some of the most effective ways of training, yet none of it is
yeah,
included with like a master's in strength and condition. You're like, and it is so much what you say about like ticking the box, where it's like, and that's unfortunately the way. Like I was trying to figure out how to put this. Like when I did a podcast, like a solo podcast, ranting about like science based, and you say we've gone backwards on the internet, and we're using now science just to preach as like our own guru method. But the reality is,
yep,
science is designed to move averages, and
yep.
that's fine, right? But that's
Mm,
also not the end goal for if we're taking, you know, a game of rugby and we're taking one player, that's one player in 30. They've got their
yeah,
own specific roles, their own specific life attributes, whatever that they want to improve upon. Like we can't just take, oh, this is what works for the average person here. And if it doesn't work,
yeah,
then, just keep applying whatever the average person does. No, you got to look outside. And when we're only trying to tick the box, then it's like, what are we doing? Like we
yeah,
might be helping maybe a majority, maybe, but we're
mm,
also fucking over everyone else to get there. You know what I
yeah.
mean? It's like
And
a
if you
reverse
look,
Bulgarian system.
absolutely, like, and if you look at, um, and if you look at a lot of programs, and this is a lot of the research, because I used to buy everything. Like I'd just be like, oh, I'll learn this, I'll do this, I'll travel here, I'll go here, and
Hmm.
just really get invested in this stuff. And in the process of writing the book, I was like, oh, so and so's got a system. I want to look at this system. It's prescription, not systems. It's
Mm-hmm.
not systems thinking. There's so much of this is what I did, so this is how you should do it. And a lot of stuff that revolves in the speed space, as it were. And this is probably why I don't get put on as many stages potentially, is because they're all force velocity profiling, low velocity profiling, sprint velocity
Mm-hmm.
profiling, and none of it actually means shit. None of it works.
No.
And and so it's kind of that echo chamber in itself, because you actually have to, in order to create and this is I think what you're saying as well, in order to create meaningful change within a set of circumstances, you can't use the word "it depends."
But
You
you also
can't.
have
And
to use the word. You have to use that word. You have to.
Yeah,
You can't
yeah.
not say it depends. You can't give definitive answers.
Well, that's the whole point, right? So that was the challenge that I had when writing the book, because I didn't want to use depends. And I don't think I've actually used that word in the book.
Nice.
Everything is in order to create a system, you have to, within inside it, you have to create sets of operating criteria that guide the decisions for the athletes. So for the coaches to prescribe what's right for the athlete. So if we have someone who is this, then this is what we do. If we have someone who is this is what we do. We don't tell you the sets and the reps. We give you a good idea, but we give you the this is the right option for this person at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And and that and that's like, even my beef with super training, it's so hierarchical. It's so meta in
Yeah.
itself. And
That's why it's such a
that's
slog
what
to consume, right? You want, okay, what
yeah,
do I use from this? What do I, no, you're giving me all of this. Great. But what do I do in the gym? Like, I'm going in 5 minutes. What am I supposed to be doing? You ain't going to get that
yeah.
answer from super training.
No, exactly. And that's why, like, I just thumb it all the time when working on bits and bobs. I mean, I've burnt myself out writing the book. I've not done anything really for the last 6 to 8 weeks after we put it out. But the when we're when we're talking about I'm a big S&C history guy. Like, I love understanding where we've come from, and that was a big part in my journey. I'm a big believer that the future lies in your past, and because we repeat the same patterns over and over again, right? So I you go back and you start to think about, like, the culture of how physical preparation created, and it's fascinating and it's awesome in terms of preparation for different things. And then all of a sudden you fast forward and it gets to the 90s, and then this thing called professionalization happens in rugby union. And players, if you watch anything like Clive Woodward talks about, it's like they just went from training in the evenings to training in the day, and they didn't really know what else to do with their time. So it was kind of like, from then on, and then you speak to guys like Craig White, Paul Stridgen, and stuff like that. What they did is they did their best at the time, but all you do is you start to look at what things in other sports do really well at kind of creating the things that we think that we need.
Mm-hmm.
So now what we have, you're going to fast forward all the way through. What you have, I see it as kind of this circle, and then you've got which is the player. Then you train like a middle distance runner. You strength train like a powerlifter. You put on muscle like a bodybuilder. If you're lucky, you sprint like a track sprinter, and you jump like someone who just jumps a lot. If you're even lucky to have that, and then you go, oh, go and play rugby and train rugby, and that will take you there. When if you actually change the question, like, how do we better prepare people to play rugby? You then completely disregard all those other things, because
Mm-hmm.
I was working with a coach last week who's involved in GA, top guy, and it's our first session, and I'm one of those guys who I'm like, I'm really mean because I force people to think. I don't spoon
Yeah.
feed anyone this stuff. And I said to him, well, if your players didn't know that weights existed, do you reckon they would use them? And he just started laughing. He was like, fucking true. They probably wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they never did.
No.
And so there's this fine window, and I'm not anti-weights. I'm not anti-weights at all. Weights before dates, curls for the girls, right? So
Good.
the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but what I am anti is the over reliance of it,
Yeah.
and in a and uh and with that over reliance, we actually completely disregard the process of specialization, which I think is we have gone so backwards with regards to that. Like most professional rugby programs do not create specialization, because if they did, we wouldn't see like videos on the internet of England rugby lifting weights in the summer tour.
Mm-hmm.
And every international team lifting weights in the summer tour to get ready to play rugby 40 weeks into a preparation campaign.
Yeah. Makes sense. So when you're trying to build a system, I think this is what I've been trying to do, like just for rugby. And you can see where we take so much stuff from other sports, but then we keep the stuff in, even though it's like you say, specialization, like a back squat is a perfect example, right? Why do people back squat? Because powerlifters are really strong. Why do powerlifters back squat? Because they're assessed on how much they can back squat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason anyone
Yeah.
has to ever back squat. I like back squat. This is not like, it's just an
Yeah.
example, right? But I have no issue with someone just doing really heavy, like split squats or reverse lunges or whatever, right? We're trying to build strength. We don't have to build strength. And a lot of like, the periodization that comes in from powerlifting is geared towards the skill acquisition of a heavy 1 rep max back squat or deadlift. Deadlift is another one. I don't see really a need to, like, it has a place every now and again, but I don't see a need where you can't, that a deadlift cannot be replaced by loads of other exercises that are far less fatiguing, and so where you have a system means that what we can do now is like insert people into the system wherever they are based on principles. And that's what I've seen from your book, which is like I've done my speed read, and now I'm trying to figure out the points where I've already found a lot of things that I want to add in, but like I'm now looking at different individual parts, but it's about because it's a system that I can now adapt into using for my athletes with my relationship. That's the difference, right? Whereas traditional learning, we want the black and white answers that just don't exist. And I think same thing do you think from strength and conditioning coaches' standpoints, we'll talk about let's just talk about professional strength and conditioning, right? These are guys that are, I know you're heavily influenced by James the Thinker Smith as well. I hear some of his stuff is like literally changed the game for me, how I approach this stuff. And it really made me think, like, so much of professional strength and conditioning is about, again, ticking that box to prove to your coach or your employer, look, I am making a difference. Look at this force velocity profile. Look at this number on a screen that this person has improved. They must be getting better. Like, and do you know that that's actually getting better on the pitch? Like, how do you quantify it? It's impossible to quantify, but we still try to. Why?
Yeah, mate. Like, there's a couple of Verkhoshansky. I was very lucky. Like, my first internship was with James Smith. It was 2 weeks. I was with him for every day for 2 weeks when he was over
God
here,
damn.
and it was unbelievable. It was when he was writing a applied speed training manual, and I just stuck to him. I didn't say anything for about a week. I was just watching,
You
and
don't have to.
no, and it just to see things unfold in front of you, and then Verkhoshansky, I think Verkhoshansky talks about the strength only adapts to the environment of which it's created. So, and I'm a big psychology fan, done a load of therapy, really got under the hood of myself to understand the way I operate. And and attachment behaviors are really, really important in our profession, and because it's what you've just described. We attach significance to things that we believe give us importance and give us power and authority. And they create positive attachments. So then we create positive associations towards those. We get reward from those. Our self-efficacy improves, and then our peer group recognize us as being someone who is powerful and has great stature. When actually, in that process, we actually become ignorant to everything else, because we are chasing something that isn't important. What we are actually chasing is our own self-importance. And which is why I love the analogy of if you've got a 7-seater car, the S&C coach is the noisy teenager in the boot facing the other way. That's where we should be in terms of the preparation. But we can be really good there. I think that's the important thing. We can be really good there. And when we look at that, and when we kind of start to create and make decisions off of that, that attachment that we create to things that provide us with safety and certainty because we are certain that we can create change within the exercise that we've chosen to use. And that's a really scary position to be in. And when we start to create and when I write in the book and everything that I started to do is actually really planted the seed at my last professional club, apart from the one I was at for 2 weeks. And I didn't go back because they didn't pay me. They like, give me my contract or I'm not coming.
Yeah.
And I didn't. But at the first last season, at the pre-season, the head of performance sat me down. He's like, "What metrics are you looking at this year?" And I said, "Acceleration and top speed." He's like, "Is that it?" And it's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, this is the fitness testing battery we're going to do." And I was having a positive conversation, now knowing it put the target on my back, because I did say to him, and at the time I raised the important question as if, well, what happens if we keep using a level 2 yo-yo and they don't get better? You can't keep improving at a yo-yo. Like, why is that important? Because what happens is if the only ones with any athlete or club of longer period of time, they're like, right, we have to improve them in the preseason again. So we're going to shift the benchmarks to the right. So you have to get a better yo-yo. You have to lift heavier weights. You have to be leaner. You have to, all these numbers are changing because that's the attachment association to insignificant metrics. To create significance. And so then we're like, well then if I want to keep getting a yo-yo better, I have to specialize in improving my yo-yo. Well, then enters the MAS protocols. So we just do MAS and we don't play rugby. And it's like, oh, let's stop doing skills so we can do a block of running.
Yeah.
In pre-season, where you get 6 weeks.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Where you've spent loads of time not doing any rugby and have all the time in the world to do any running. I mean, not saying that you should run, just saying that you haven't had the opportunity to do rugby. You've got 6 weeks to prepare for a test or for rugby. Like, rugby is the fucking test, you know? Like, this, you're talking to me like this was a good few years ago now, where I really cemented my idea that, like, every now and again I'll do some testing just for, like, if anything, it's just like a representation of not even progress, but like where they're at now. And it's just a few markers and it's not any judgment. Some markers will go backwards and that's also fine. But the idea is, like, we're testing to be, or we're not, the only test I care about is how good they feel on the rugby pitch. So what you said about the tested resonated exactly with me a couple of years back. I'm like, because I work with individuals, so I've got nothing, like, if they feel that they're getting better, I'm doing my job. Like, I don't, like, if they feel like they're playing better on match day, I'm doing my job. If they feel like they're getting worse, then we have to address that. But that's my job to address and decipher, is it me? Are they slower? Are they faster? Are they part of a system they can't, on an individual level, we can deal with that. But like on a squad of 40 players, I guess that's where the need for justification comes in. But then again, if you're employing a strength and conditioning coach, that's your job. You should trust them to do their job. Like,
Mm.
why are we putting in markers to it's a hard system to sort of solve the
Yeah.
way we've got it
Mm.
set up, And that's where I
Yeah.
thought about James Smith, is because he was the one that was like, was it head of performance? And
Yeah.
that's all that person cares about.
Yeah.
Um,
No, without a doubt. And they should, I mean, in rugby, they don't sit above the director of rugby, which is just,
yep.
crazy. And the way I look at testing, um, is understanding what things we can just start taking out of the program.
Mm-hmm. That's
And,
that's that's all I do. Like, so often, so many people send you stuff, and you're like, all right, why are you doing that? Oh, just cause. Like,
yeah,
get rid of it.
yeah. Yeah. Can we, and again, it's this concept of leading indicators. Where are our clues? What are our threats? How am I taking, this restriction that I've got, or, some of the guys that I work with remotely and stuff, we solve some really complicated stuff. Um, and they want, their goal is, I want to be faster on the field. Sweet, let's go fucking town. They don't care about anything
Mm-hmm.
else. That's what it is. So we're there, right? And as if my simple stack that I use, if we've got anywhere between 2 to 4% increase in a lower body compound lift, then things got to go. Because once we've got that, we need to start using it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to start taking that and processing it and start thinking, well, if I use a trap bar, for example, how is that going to help, for argument's sake, let's keep saying planes, how is that going to help my counter movement jump? If my trap bar is going up and my counter movement jump isn't, well, what we're doing, wasting time with our trap bar. We've got to get the jumps going, because the jumps will help improve relative power, which we can then start to use. We can then start to morph that again. And I think, again, this is where we've gone backwards. Is it all the stuff, all the early periodization, all the early training manuals, what they have done so well being founded in Olympic sports, is understand the concept of multi-year training. So what we get, and in the meat market of pro clubs, where I don't do it anymore, I've got a much better life because I don't, just personally, let alone professionally,
Yeah.
is that you got a 2-year deal or a 1-year deal. Like, what the fuck am I going to do with that? And then let alone half your players get swapped out every season. So then we get caught in this, oh, well, we've got to build the base. We've got to build the base. Well, these fucking guys have got the base like the M25, they're going
Mm-hmm.
backwards. And we have to, that's where, if we understand, right, well, let's take 2 to 4% year one. Well, let's see what we can turn that into. And think of it like a game of Tetris, but horizontally. I'm stacking these things, and we're
Mm-hmm.
just winning. We're winning. We're dropping things out, and we are winning, because by the time it gets to August, September, I may get my strength lift is acceleration.
Yeah.
My prep is training, team training, and my game is my game. And I'm going to then do recovery. I'm then going to work on tissue tolerance, central nervous system recovery, um, and then that's how we can start processing things through. Because if the goal of general Bondage, the goal of general preparation is to not do general preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to stop doing it.
Yeah. You have to be generally prepared. Move on. Yeah.
Yeah, and most
Absolutely.
people most people generally are. Um, but we get the acute training response from strength training, like barbells and all of those sorts of things. Like, oh God, 5-3-1. I'm now punching my single, I'm like doing 9 reps at this exercise now. My predicted 1 RM is like 300 and million. And so I'm better. And that's the confidence play. And so with our athletes and again, the psychology is working to remove those cultural attachments with our players.
Mm-hmm.
And, more is more. More is not better. More is
Mm-hmm.
just more, and the and reorientating that round. When I worked with Alex when he was in the NFL for those periods of time, that was the big thing that we did. We completely changed the attachment to different types of training, to which strength training became 10% of the focus.
Mm-hmm.
Preparation for training became 60% of the focus.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't wham bam, thank you, ma'am. It was, well, let's go and do, I think in his peak, one of his peak blocks, we built up to, I think it was like 2 sets of 3 on a Hatfield split squat floating heel, and he bounced like 240. And it was
Yeah.
like, well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
But
because all the
like,
speed stuff did it.
yeah, and it's also one of those things where if you do the opposite way around, so you spend, you do a 10% preparing, do 60% of the extra strength work. Like, number one, like how much extra fatigue are you causing with all of that extra strength work that then takes away from everything else within your week? But
Yeah,
also, are you even going to be able to reach the peaks that you reached when you got yourself prepared with that just 10%? Probably not.
yeah,
And for someone as advanced that's got a contract in the fucking NFL, right?
yeah.
Do they need all this volume? No, they need a real specific stimulus that is not easy to get to,
Mm,
and more is not better. Like, you can't make up
yeah,
for not doing 240 kilos by doing loads of reps at 100. That's not how physiology works. It
yeah,
is like but we get, I think there's like, and this is where that this the science based stuff comes in, and you get lost in the detail, and you get lost in the sort of fear of not doing enough. And this is something you've probably dealt with a lot with like rugby players. It's something I've dealt with, so I know you've dealt with it as well. Like, competitive players want to do more because they feel like, oh, my opposition's doing more. My Someone that's vying for my shirt is doing, what if they're doing more and I'm just here resting? Yeah, they're doing more and fatiguing themselves. Like, you're doing what's
yeah.
better. Like,
Yes,
it's a hard
100%.
nut to crack, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's really interesting is because all the like, and again, for your listeners, coaches and players, it's really about a lot of it are truths that we know that we just don't accept.
Yeah.
We just don't want to accept them, and so all the things that you can do at high volume, at high frequency, are directly detracting from the things that you can't do at high volume and high frequency, but those are the things that you desire.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to, and this is that role of specialization, and with inside, the system we create, that general overview is that general speed. Everything that we do to develop general speed is in the pursuit of improving acceleration, top speed, pre-plan change of direction. So anything that you think that you would do underneath that, you do it very sparingly,
Mm-hmm.
because that's, I like the turn of phrase, that's where the system starts, where everyone else finishes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can tick that box super quickly, like stupidly quickly, if we do the
Yeah.
right things.
Yeah.
And then we can start building, I like to call team sport sprinters, and so that they can move well and catch a ball and pass a ball, and create the skill acquisition demands.
Mm-hmm.
Which was when I started, when you asked me that question about understanding, why do we think it was so broken? I played, in the national leagues over here for 14 years. And No, not one coach taught me how to beat a player one-on-one. An attack coach would never teach you. And even when I was in with the pros, and even at like I went into international camps and stuff like that, we do attack day. There's no 1v1. But if you think about from a defense coach's point of view, a defense coach's prime job is to teach you how to tackle and make sure that you can keep tackling and understand the way in which you tackle within your system.
Mm-hmm.
An attack coach will teach a backline how to run strike moves.
Yeah. But also, I would even push back on that defense coach part because I don't know if I was ever taught how to tackle. Like,
Yeah, that's
or
fair.
maybe I was taught like, this is a passive tackle if you're at the last second, or whatever.
Yeah,
It's not that often you're taught defensive line systems. You're taught, you're the
yeah,
first at the ruck, go play guard. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, and the other one I do,
It's
the
that
thing
one,
I
isn't
learned
it?
from,
It's
yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
exactly. Just fucking look at the ruck. If you're there, just
Get
push the next guy out. Yeah.
get your feet the right way around.
What if someone comes running into you? Just smash them. Like, and this is the thing
Yeah.
I learned. I learned this a lot when I started coaching amateur teams myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
right, you guys have never been taught how to ruck, and you're not like, and people get pissed off when we don't win a ruck or someone gets a turnover, and you're like, there was numbers there. Why didn't you clear them out? It's not because they're not trying. It's because they
Mm.
don't know. It's because they've not been taught. Yet
Yeah.
the response is you got to get there and you got to try harder. And the
Mm.
same approach to strength and condition. We got to get fitter. Fucking
Yeah.
how? Like we're not doing a good job of like and rugby sort of filters for people who want to be tough, want to be challenged, want to push themselves. But
Mm.
actually, as you say, it's something that they've got to unlearn is that attachment from doing more and doing more being better. And it's not you don't and with the weights as well, just wanting to hit the weights as often as you can because that's what where you a lot of people will sort of self-identify. And it's
Mm.
not a thing that you learn once. You can
Yeah.
be told it once. You can be told it 10 times. You forget about it the next week when you've seen a Ronnie Coleman highlight video on Instagram. You're like, fuck yeah, let's
Yeah.
go fucking
Yeah.
squat heavy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fucking
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's again, he's a great example of the cost of specialization.
yep.
You know, and that, that's the name of the game that you're playing. And for any player, I think the physical preparation side of things is really again, it's metric centered as opposed to player centered. And so understanding your player archetype is really important.
Hmm.
I was lucky enough to work with Andy Good for my time at Wasps, and he won the Golden Boot 3 times and didn't change his could bench press dumbbells 40 kilos when he started when I was there, and that's how when he retired, that was the same, and got lilo leg. He got an adductor tendinopathy when he was on holiday. Came back. All right, we'll just do a bit of mini band work and we'll start dictating the game again because that's the way he played. And then
Hmm.
so understanding those archetypes that your players are will then start to and understand how you are in terms of the way you play, which is the way you play should be the question of what do you get the most success from on the field. That's why I
Hmm.
always ask these to my players, and they're, why do you want to run faster? They'll always give you a tactical answer. They won't give you because I'm slow. They'll give you because I can't do X. So then this is where that system comes to life. It's like, well, so you can't punch an outside fade on your winger. You can't use your 5 meter touchline well. So you can't get the fend out, can't rotate your hips well enough. Sweet, because you keep getting caught. Right, okay. So then what's your training preference? So where's your historical background? Are you powerlifter, weightlifter, bodybuilder, sprinter, tactician? Okay, so then this is how I start to prepare you because I've got to undo everything you've done.
Hmm.
And so then we filter and we run people through to then maximize. And this is a really long-winded way of basically saying that we need to maximize the amount of time players actually have playing the game.
Hmm. No, I agree.
If either like a rugby player, I was working with He was an international of a really good Northern Hemisphere team. Could squat 250 kilos. He was front row. Could squat 250 kilos day one of preseason. Could squat 250 kilos the end of season. Multiple knee injuries. Is that because he is not strong enough?
Absolutely not.
And that was the argument that was being had with the club.
Yeah.
Your quad strength is not there. You fucking what? And so that's like these broken systems, these broken ideas, because it becomes so detached from the game. And having you play, I've played, love the game. You know, I like to say, I know what it's like to have fucking mud in my mouth. You know, and to know what real speed feels like. Lots of coaches can't run fast. Lots of S&C coaches don't sprint, don't cut, don't change direction. I had a coach want to come do a session with me, blew his adductor, grade 2 adductor.
Jesus.
Doing extensive change of direction.
Uh-huh.
I was like, wow, how are we progressing if coaches are becoming less athletic?
Yeah.
You know,
It's
just
nuts.
that base of athleticism. I'm not saying that coaches have to do X, Y, Z, because people always go, well, Dan Paff doesn't fucking sprint. No, of course he doesn't. He's 70. But I bet he did.
Yeah. And I bet he's not going to pull an adductor doing extensive Jesus.
Change of direction.
Yeah, change it up, like just doing any plyometrics or any it's crazy because you're right. Because I was thinking about this when you first said, we've kind of gone backwards. I thought I wanted to push back because what we can do well now compared to 15 whatever years before is players have access to people like us or information like us that enables them to figure out what they need on an individual basis. That was not there before. That was, you had to piece together, okay, what's this bodybuilder doing? What's this track athlete doing? What's this I don't know, gymnast doing, etc., etc. And you would build your own program from that. And you would still have to strip a lot. It's hard, you know. That's where we've got a little bit of success. But then what we also do have is, you know, this when you went to the, I mean, you already said it, like the demand for people that want to work with these top end athletes is huge. Like people get into strength and conditioning because they love the gym and they're like, all right, I want to work in the NFL or I want to work with premiership teams. All right, cool. You're going to get a master's if you're lucky. You're then going to do what, 3 years unpaid. I don't know what you're doing in that time, but you ain't making any money. And then you're going to work, Jesus, like 12 hours a day, long days from then on as well. And then you're expected to make all these players better all at the same time, minimal support. And if you don't do well or if something goes wrong, you're first on the chopping block.
Oh,
and it's
100%.
like it's brutal for these guys. But these guys love this stuff in their echo chamber. So it's really hard to sort of break the mold because when you say the stuff that you're saying, they can kind of take that personally. You know, they'll take a lot of coaches will, and I guess that is where we've gone backwards with that. And then we've also gone backwards where you do have these guys like us. You have people that say, you know, dealing with individuals as athletes, but you also have extensively more people with that strength and conditioning, like from a professional background. But also you have bloody Liver King. You have and the more Instagram has gotten popular, Instagram is a visual platform, and therefore bodybuilding, the physique culture of fitness, it's changed a little bit in the last couple of years with hybrid athleticism, which means, I don't know, being an athlete but not doing any sports.
Being general
GPT. Yeah, doing general athleticism, okay, good-ish. But like again, still attaching their identity to what numbers, metrics to prove that they're a hybrid athlete. And therefore it's harder because people can easily trip themselves up with all these things that they think that they're supposed to do. And we live in this, you know, with social media, there's so much scarcity. It's really easy to get overwhelmed as a player.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, this is from one of the guys in our community. He said, basically, I'm not sure how you're going to take this question. It might piss you off a little
Yeah.
bit, but like,
Yeah.
because there's a system in place for this and it's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
But he just asked, what's ground zero for speed training? So if he doesn't do any speed
Yeah.
training, what's a
Yeah.
repeatable, simple action that's going to deliver him bang for buck?
Yeah, no, that doesn't piss me off at all. It's a great question.
Yeah,
I think it's a brilliant question.
good.
And so if I was to, let's do this really, really quickly. So ground, and it's going to start in a place that you probably don't think it should start. Ground zero for sprinting comes from accessible range of motion. So then straight away, if you are not doing any form of like yin yoga, you need to do it, because you need to start to teach your body to open. Lots of the compression. So you think about training as like an accordion, compression and expansion. Every type of training that we do is compression in nature. We need to spend more time expanding yin and yang, right? So yin yoga will allow us to start to be able to decompress the contractile properties in our body, which actually will start to make us looser. So once we start to become loose, we can then start to perform our basic drills. And I would say, if you're listening, get your pen and paper out. I'd say ankle, A skip, B skip, scissors, skips for height, skips for distance, a bit of like little bit of lateral movement, even like front, just like zigzags from left to right, left to right. 2 sets of 20 meters of each. That will be enough to start, because what you're trying to do is take the flexibility that you're putting into your body and nice and supple. And I'd even do 20 minutes of yin stretching. Just find something on YouTube, find some hot bird that's stretching in front of you, enjoy that, and then get on with that, and then you're good to go. And that's how I would start. Then I would start to implement what I call long acceleration, which is taken from Soviet systems, but compressed, and you do 40-meter build-ups, 50-meter build-ups, and you start stationary and you slowly build up to that 40 to 50-meter zone where you want to be running at 7 or 8 out of 10. And then I would start to accumulate volume with that, because those, just like in your 5x5 at 70%, for example, that is going to be your 70% effort. So every step you do there is a rep at 70% of your maximum, which then which creates what we call a magnitude of effect, which so basically means that load, it has a great effect on your body, which you will then start to try to adapt. And then that is exactly how I would start. And it's how I start most of my athletes. We start there pretty much all the time, because then that is the foundation of like learning to sprint. We have to teach your body to, first of all, learn how to do the skills, learn how to establish the motor task, accumulate volume of that, consolidate volume of that, to then actually start to use running as an exercise. And that, from a lot of the thing that we've talked about, is the misallocation of what we constitute as the competitive task in our training. So the competitive task for a lot of people training program is aka the lift we identify we want to test within. That is not the competitive task. That is the general exercise that supports the development of the competitive task. So we need to create sprinting to be the competitive task at level 1. And at level 2 and 3 and 4, we create sprinting with the ball in the hand, with the integration of skill. So ball in hand, catching, passing at percentages above 90% or thereof, then evading opponents, then in game. And that's kind of how you plant the thread all the way through from a lower body exercise, all the way through.
Love it.
That's the theme anyway.
Following on from that, one more question we have because I thought this might happen. We've hardly spoken about speed training on this podcast. Like, we've spoken about everything around it, this is what people need to hear anyway. So I'm happy we did, and it was always going to be like this. Let's be honest, mate. But anyway, the other question about speed was how much of speed is like technique? So,
Yeah.
I mean, take that question for what it is. How should amateur rugby players go about improving their technique? So, have at it, mate.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question and really misleading. Well, the information out there is really misleading, not the question itself, because
Yeah.
um, technique is only as good as the context of which it's used. And also, if you look up speed technique, you are going to get a abundance of useless information about track and field sprint models, which are built on an ideal archetype. And the techniques are only examined, right? They're built on ideal anthropometrics. So they're only examined on the elite performer. They are not examined on Big John, right? Or your jinky winger, where you have actually disproportion. So an optimal sprint body is short body, long legs, because you need less weight up top and to drive the car downstairs. And so one of the challenges we actually had with Alex was that his torso is as long as his legs. And he was 6'6", so he'd fold like a deck chair, right? And so to create balance within that was a wonderful experience. So for amateur rugby players, and I think it's generally for a lot of rugby players and just sportsmen in general, they need to understand that technique is not everything. Intent is everything. And when we start to understand that principle, all you need to do, if you're listening to this now, I want you in your head is to get a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle of it. And that's called optimal. And then left of it, about an inch wide, draw another line. Okay, that's called suboptimal. And then the other side of that solid white line, draw another line. And that is called suboptimal. All you have to do is stay within there. All you have to do is stay within that. It needs to look half right to be okay, because what you will establish is just like when you first started to strength train, you would respond to the training efficiently and really well, and you would get improvements. You will do exactly the same in sprinting. You will start to refine your technique, but the faster you get, the more the technique breaks because you do it faster. So the simple mantra I use and teach all my athletes is, if it looks shit slow, it will be shit fast. But it's just too fast to see. Okay. And so knowing, and this is why, again, I'm not a big proponent of sprinting above 90%. I think it's redundant because you wouldn't 1 rep max every week. So why would you 1 rep max on sprinting that you have not specifically prepared for? Which again throws residuals out the window. I love arguing with people about residuals, having healthy conversations, because residuals are created within Olympic disciplines and within bi-peaking cycles. So, well, they're fucking useless then. So they don't work in what we do. And so, but they are anchors. So you don't need to sprint above 90% every week, and you don't need perfect technique. What you need to do is have awareness of your technique and know that you want to accelerate, get your hips in front. Don't worry about your feet, get your hips in front. If you want to run fast up top speed, imagine you're like a plane taking off. You've got to go forward to push yourself up into the space. Running fast is very slow in the mind. It should feel fluid. It should feel like you're not running fast. And, I would like to think I'm one of those rare coaches. I've ran 23 mile an hour. I've done it on a field. I've done it multiple times in a game. Like at 6'4", 100 kilos. I've done it. And I know what it feels like. And it doesn't feel as fast as you may think. So for anyone to create improvement in speed, and this is why I wrote the book, it'll cost you 25 quid and it's all there for you. 25 quid and you saw it. And that's why I've done it. So these questions get answered. So we don't have to rely on the likes of social media, which is very conflated. I've just done a 6-week detox. I'm a much happier person. And so we don't have to rely on those things. We pick up a book and we listen to the words and we read them and we apply them and we go for it and invest in things that take longer to understand than having a shit. And that's
last couple of follow-ups on that. Firstly, I love the idea of intent over like technique, because I always think like it's like intent is what you're looking for. Your body will find a way, right? If you have the intent, it's not like it doesn't look perfect, doesn't matter. Your body's going to find a way. I always think that like it's so easy to overthink it, especially like you look at some of the like all the top athletes will have different sprinting styles. It's like golf, the most open chain, like this is how you swing a golf club. No, everybody swings bloody different. And
Yeah.
they're not concerned about how they swing, they're concerned about the outcome of how they hit the ball. Same thing should be for your sprinting, you know?
Yeah.
Now, the not above 90% one is one that I don't hear often. And it's one that I find that like it's interesting because I always like the idea of trying to get to 90% or above because of the freshness that is required for you to be into that in that state, right? If you go into a session knowing that you only need to go sub 85% speed or whatever, there's not the intent's not there, the mind goes off, and also you accept going into that session potentially carrying fatigue. So I like to go into the speed sessions, because again, that's probably, we can lift weights under fatigue. We can do a little bit of rugby under fatigue, although from what you've said before, and this is something I also absolutely agree with, we want, like, especially amateur rugby players, if you're only training rugby twice a week, you must take advantage of those sessions. You can't go into those sessions with DOMs everywhere, feeling like shit, saying, "Oh, sorry, it's just hit the gym. That's more important." No, your rugby, you only get two opportunities a week. But yeah, the 90% thing. So how often would you go above 90% for someone that hasn't got the efficiency of a, let's say like a elite level sprinter or athlete?
Yeah. So if we unpack this just quickly, the argument for that is that it is to tax the central nervous system, to elicit a central nervous system response, right? And so if we dovetail back to strength only adapts in which the context it's created, and so then there has to be a motor control element to it. So there has to be a skill element to that. So you have to, just in the same way as you would earn the right to build up to a 1-2 RM in back squat, you have to do the same in sprinting. But sprinting is the most physically taxing thing that you can do as a field sport athlete. And so therefore, when you are at a given training level, right? So if I was to learn my speed ages principle, learn sprint to train sprint, sprinting to compete, and sprinting to win. Someone who is learning to sprint does not possess the physical capabilities to withstand 90% plus sprinting. Their 90% plus sprinting would actually only be 90% effort, because if they tried to run at 90%, they would actually run slower and get hurt. So they do not those players do not have the task specific physical capabilities in order to withstand the velocities and taxonomy of 90% plus sprinting. So then it becomes a negative training response. So training to sprint, so the goal of training to sprint is to build those specific physical qualities and consolidate at those specific qualities in order to touch 90%. Then we start to sprinting to compete. We actually start to use 90% as a training metric. And then sprinting to win is we exploit 90% and above on race day or on game day, as it were. So when we put that in the context of being a team sport sprinter, I don't care that you do, or we're trying to always find above or above 90% relative to max in games. That's the only time we need to see it, because that's the time that it counts. And also, don't forget the reason why the brain doesn't, the brain can't differentiate stressors, only the magnitude of that stress. So why do we never adopt the principles of training max to locomotion? only to barbell lifting because it's
Yeah.
something that we understand is safe. We understand that world. And I did a podcast a long time ago. It was a podcast with something with Ken Clark, and they were talking about Vince Anderson wickets and the popularization of wickets, and
Hmm.
it's just a constraint to manage velocity. And I just based mine all off percentage of max speed, and it was like all these academics are like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, you just wave load against them." Like you gradually build them and you constrain them to it and you gradually build them and they run really fast and just
Yeah.
see these academic minds just fall apart because it's so logical.
It makes so much sense. Like that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? And that's where speed training gets sort of muddier compared to, you know, your barbell lifts and whatever, is because it's like when we're talking about 90%, 100%, someone can construe that as their 90% speed and their 100% max speed. But actually, there's especially like the more inefficient you get, the more the whole thing just sort of plateaus out at 85%. You put in more effort, you're not, or as you said, like just declines.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we talk about this 100% or 90% above. That's
Mhm.
actually impossible for a lot of people. It's so
Yeah.
true. The
Yeah.
only way they get better is practice and technical increases. It's
Yeah.
it's really good, man.
And it's something, thank you. It's something I really stress hard in the book and and is that if you replace speed with power, it'd be the same thing. If you replace speed with strength, it would be the same thing. It's all the same thing.
Hmm.
Because it's about how we create adaptation and how we systematically create adaptation with individual differences around motor skills and tasks, right? So I was at a conference speaking not that long ago, and this is where I believe we've gone quite backwards, is as a profession, as coaches. Someone came up to me afterwards. He said to me, Sam, that was amazing. You're so ahead of your time. And I just said, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The irony of that is that everything that I just spoke about is over 50 years old.
Yeah. Uh-huh. It's so
And that's
true.
why our future lies in our past. And that's why I took on the challenge to write the book, because it is a tip of the hat. And even the cover looks like a 1990s book. And I tried to create something that brings forward things that have never been brought forward to team sports before,
Hmm. I
which
think you've done
is,
a good job of it, mate. You've done a really
well,
good
we had
job.
this awesome conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put the Amazon link in the description below. Um, do you have a personal no, is Amazon the best place to get it from?
Yeah, like it's crazy publishing a book. I mean, royalties, I get like £2 a book.
Yeah.
It's like mad, but we put it out with color, best quality paper, and that all costs money. So, and
Yeah.
pricing it at a point that, creates accessibility.
Yeah.
You know, my book, and that's the big thing. And thank you for wanting to put it out there. The big thing for me is that when I decide to stop doing this, I'll still be in it. And there'll be someone like me years ago, or like you, who I got bought super training for my birthday because I couldn't afford it. And um, it changed my life. And that's what I hope when I'm gone and someone goes, who the fuck's this guy, Sam Portland? What's
Yeah.
sports speed? Ah, Sam Portland, I get it.
It was written in the
And that's
stars,
that.
mate. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it
And
is I've got it. I got it took me a couple days to get through like the Kindle like preview. And then I realized I got to the end. I was like, oh crap! Right, I've got another 300 pages to get through. Brilliant, mate. It's really good. And the one thing I like about it is this is something I've been stewing over, like my ideas on strength and conditioning, putting them down into a book as well. And
yeah.
what I've always liked about the books that I respect the most are the ones that have sample weeks, sample protocols and stuff, but does
Mm,
not have a here athlete A program, athlete B program, athlete C program, because so many people, and fucking hands up, guilty as charged 15 years ago, 10 years ago, would have bought this book, gone straight to the end, gone, where's the program? I'm going to do the program. And you
Yeah.
don't learn the fundamentals, and you don't learn that, like, this is, and this is what we always try and preach as coaches, is like, it's not a numbers game. It's not a, like, we try to quantify what we can quantify,
Yeah.
but it's a system that is bigger than numbers, way bigger than numbers, and way bigger than just inserting this person into here and that's it, and letting it take care of itself. You've got to be continually assessing yourself, and like it. What I like about this, the idea of this stuff as well, is that it doesn't just apply to the weight room. It like applies to life. Like,
Mm.
if you can break down your strengths and weaknesses as a rugby player, or even go more specifically with your speed training as a rugby player, and then you have the awareness to self-assess yourself as you go. You have the wherewithal to then study and figure out where to go from there. Like, what
Mm.
could you do in your professional career? What can you do with your other hobbies? What can you do with as a father, as a mother, as a family person, as a
Yeah.
friend, as a captain
Yeah.
of your rugby team? Like, all of a sudden, everything else becomes way outside of this box that everyone loves to put things in because they're easier to digest.
Yeah.
And I think your book is a, another thing, a really good thing that can contribute to that in its own way. So congratulations, mate. It's really good.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I loved hearing that. That was awesome. I love that.
I didn't know that was coming, but it's facts, man.
Yeah.
It's facts, and
Yeah.
I think me and you are two peas from the same pod. I'd
Yeah.
love to get you back on, probably at some point in a couple months' time or something, and we'll actually talk about
Yeah.
speed training more specifically. Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely, mate.
we'll probably still
Absolutely.
slag off the strength and conditioning industry as well, but you know how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll break down some stuff. We'll get really applied. That would be fun. That would be real
Okay,
fun.
cool. Social medias, Coach Sportland. Anything else you
Yeah,
need to plug?
that's on the Instagram doodaloo. But YouTube, check me out on YouTube. I've got my office here. I literally stand in front of that whiteboard and I draw stuff and I teach, and that's what I love. I love to do. So it'd be the best place.
Beautiful. Yeah, this will be up on
Yeah,
YouTube, so I'll link it in there as well, man. Like, I'm a
amazing.
much bigger fan. I mean, we've spoken about it on this pod, man. I'm a much bigger fan of YouTube stuff because it's way more intentional, as you said. Like, you can learn stuff as you're taking a shit, but how much really are you going to learn? You're not really there to learn.
Yeah,
But you go on YouTube. Okay, how can I solve this problem? So cool, man.
yeah,
All right, it's
yeah.
been great
That's it.
chatting.
Appreciate you, man.
Take care.